on vinyl and vision.
Hey folks, welcome to the show. I'm your host Jimmy Drab. This is episode 64. My very special guest tonight is Mike Watt. Man, I can't even tell you how fucking excited I am to have Mike Watt on the show. So for those of you new to this show, the idea is essentially talk to an artist about an album that influenced them to create what they do, create their art. So this is a big one. I mean, even historically speaking, I mean the weight of Watt as the iconic punk rock musician that he was, that founded a legendary punk band, the Minutemen, and helped influence and inspire generations since, is it's pretty monumental. And to obviously discuss an album that is similarly influential and inspirational of generations is Richard Hell and the Voidoids' Blank Generation. So it's big. I'll tell you right now, I did not have enough time to prepare for this show. I had about 3 days, which is a third of the time that it takes me to prepare for one of these. So, I did the best that I could in the limited amount of time that I had. Watt is he's such a fucking hard person to talk to. I knew going into this that I was going to be a little starstruck, so I tried not to stutter too much on that idea. And then also, there's so much there, and he's done so many of these conversations that I wanted to try to obviously get past all of the surface stuff that is typical in interviews. Yeah, it was a little tricky. And so some of the stuff, I mean, if you're a big fan and you've kind of gone over the history and watched the documentary and so forth and so on, some of it's going to seem a little redundant, but we get into it. We get into the album track by track, and I do what I do here as far as, trying to pull weird things kind of off kilter, or at least out of the ordinary questioning based on the material, based on the content of the record, and still have it apply to their life and their experience. So that, I feel, is the greatest part. And it's a great conversation anyway, because it's fucking Watt. He's just a fucking joy to listen to. We weren't able to do video because he only does audio interviews, and but if you could see me, you just see me fucking smiling throughout the whole time. Okay? So even though I might seem quiet, it's because I wanted to just let him speak. Okay? So, yeah, man, it's fucking great. Thank you for tuning in. All that we ask that you do here is please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review. Those things. Subscribe and the rating and review in particular, for a free service, because that's what podcasts are for the most part. They're usually free. And, I don't ask for money. I mean, I sell records, and if you want to buy my records, go to psychicstatic.net. I have a store in there. You can look through what I've got in my store, as well as a link to the eBay page where I also sell stuff there. And there's also different stuff in that store. So between the two of them, there's a lot of shit. So if you want to get some of that, it helps me out. Thank you very much. If not, the easy thing to do without spending any money, just simply subscribe. YouTube page, every other streaming media, whether it's Apple or Google or whatever you use, it helps us out. And I really, really appreciate it. A new project by Mike Brigetta that Mike Watt plays with, and they are currently on tour. If you're listening to this on Monday, March 14th, the tour has officially kicked off today in California, and they are doing 48 dates in 48 days. Punk as fuck. I encourage you to go to their website. Links will be provided in our show notes, and go get tickets. They will probably be in a city near you, so look it up. Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy the show.
I'm talking to you via Skype.
I know. It's a little weird for me. I don't use Skype usually.
I hope it doesn't hurt too much.
It's been a little bit painful over the weekend learning it, but I think I got it.
Yeah, it's like a telephone.
Yeah, I guess so. So
I use it 20 years, 8 months now with my show.
Really? Wow.
Not from
Your show's
Pedro.
been running 20 years?
20 years, 8 months. I think
Wow.
1,167 editions.
That's crazy. Congratulations. That's quite an achievement.
And I use this to have guests on.
I see that. Cool. Yeah, I love your show actually. I've listened to a bunch of your episodes and I think it's pretty great resource for like learning about music, you know? I mean, like I'm a big music fan and I don't know nearly as much as I feel like I should. So listening to your show, I mean, there's so much music that you play, you know, between guests and it's a great resource, I think.
Yeah, it was 14 months. I had 5 guests a week. Usually I do one show a week, but because of the situation.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's about people. I didn't know all these cats. They're connected to each other, you know?
Yeah.
But that's like the old days of the movement. Didn't know the Black Flag guys. Met them handing out flyers for one of their first gigs. And they couldn't believe that there was a punk band in Pedro. So they asked us, do you want to open? Yeah, stuff happens like that, right?
Yeah.
SST 002.
Right. That's amazing.
It totally is. I got into music to be with D Boone, you know. We were boys, 12 years old. And I never imagined. We were very lucky. Right place, right time.
Right. So I was going to ask you about your show. I was wondering, would you consider it a responsibility of yours to teach or inspire as many people as you can about music?
Yeah. I think music's a lifeline. You know, all artistic expression, but I'm a little biased, the music wise. But I like
Of
books
course.
a lot too.
Yeah, me too.
In fact, I use books a lot to inspire my music because it's a little harder to steal. Got a few layers of abstraction. When you're hearing other people's music, it's really easy to kite their licks.
Right. Or even the riffs, right? Just kind of like
That's why I'm saying lick. Yeah, we say licks, riffs.
Oh, licks. All right. I thought you said lyrics.
Motifs. No. Well, I guess lyrics. Dude, no, I was talking more about the licks, the riffs.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely. That's why I went through a long period where I wasn't listening to any new music. I said I'm not going to listen to music anymore because I don't want it to influence the music I can create.
Yeah, that can happen. But then it can inspire.
Of course.
You know, that's the thing. You know, reading all these books about John Coltrane, and he was listening to everybody, but he still made it his own. He said you could play a shoestring if you were sincere about it.
Sure you can. It's just about that idea of like, you know, possibly like even if it's subconsciously lifting, you know, a lick from somebody else that you heard that you liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's what I was trying to avoid.
In the beginning, of course, everybody imitates, right? Little kids watching their pop shave, and yeah.
Sure. So, hey, I want to talk a little bit about Pedro.
Sure.
I've never. What's that?
I came here when I was 8 years old. I'm from Virginia. I was born in Virginia. I lived there twice. And my papa's a sailor. Engine room.
In the Navy, right?
Sailors usually are in the Navy.
Yeah.
And he was machinist mate, which is an engine room guy. And we were in war with Southeast Asia, Vietnam situation. So, I mean, Newport News, that the biggest Navy base in the world, but it's on the other side. So these things called the orders came, right? You get 30 days to report to San Pedro, California. And I've been here 58 years.
Yeah.
No, 56 years. 56 years.
56, okay. So I've never been there. I've never been over to Pedro, but I feel like through all your music, there's this vibe of Pedro. Would you say Pedro, that's true?
Pedro is, the Minutemen was from Pedro, you know, and this is where I met D Boone. This is where a lot of my music is rooted.
Right.
Okay. I remember cardinals, and honeysuckle, crab apples, sweaty summers, freezing winters, But Pedro, and it's funny, that was a war thing, right? It was a Navy base when I came here, but there's none of that. A little Coast Guard compound, but it is the biggest port in the United States, but it's for trade, right? Shipping and commerce. And for about 12 years, I did kayak.
Oh, yeah.
I got bad knees, and it was too hard to get it from the boat, from the van to the water. So, yeah, I was actually my own engine room. So,
On the kayak, you mean?
Yeah, well, no motor, right? I'm the motor.
You are the motor, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm my own little personal, and it's very quiet. Sit really low to the water. It's a trippy experience. So there's a Pedro feel to the music. I remember when Minutemen started, and people were telling us, Hollywood's like 30 miles north of us. Politically, we're the city of Los Angeles, but we're spread out over here. And you got to move up to Hollywood. Because in those days, that's where all the gigs was, right?
Right.
And T. Boone said, "Well, we move up to Hollywood. What are we going to write about?" I said, "I don't know, Hollywood." He said, "Yeah, stay in Pedro. We could drive up to Hollywood and do the gig, but let's live here."
Right. Yeah, but so I mean, like Pedro, I've never been. I mean, I feel like a lot of your music.
I say that is because D. Boone wanted it to be a Pedro band. I think that was his intention of the Minutemen.
Because he was pretty smart. He's pretty forward thinker.
And and then here's the funny thing, the guys we were meeting at the gigs, right? It'd be the same 100, 200 people every weekend. You didn't really know them, but you kind of knew them because you saw them, right? And
right.
Nobody knew about I ended up painting on my bass, Pedro. People thought that was my name was Pedro, Spanish for Peter.
Right.
Yeah, I remember one of my first songs I wrote was called "Nobody Comes from Pedro." It was a weird it was sort of similar in a way to bass guitar during arena rock. In fact, when I look back at the whole movement, that's what it was about. It wasn't really a style of music. That was up to each band, each musician. I think the movement as a whole was an anti-arena rock. It was a trippy situation. The music was always in clubs.
Right. You mean punk rock specifically?
Yeah, I mean, without that movement, you wouldn't even know about the Minutemen. It'd be just me and D. Boone doing music with each other to be with each other. Right. Because of that movement, we got to, records, play in front of people, that kind of stuff. Write our own songs. When we were kids, you just copied off records. No one in town, no one in Pedro we knew.
Right.
Their own songs. Very strange.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say about the club thing,
sure.
I ended up helping the Stooges for 125 months. So I found out, finally the youngest guy in the band. And they told me about the 60s. And there was club music and little labels and garage bands, all that stuff that happened for us in the 70s. None of that was really new.
Oh, yeah.
It was new to us. There was a band up in the city called Black Humor. They had this one tune, lady screaming. She goes, "The only thing new is you finding out about it." And that's what it was, Just didn't know for these. Because me and D. Boone, George, you were 13 in 1970. So our whole teen years is the 70s. And a lot of that, before that, gigs were like promotion for record companies to sell records. Then it became an industry unto itself. Those first gigs, the first gig me and D. Boone saw together was T-Rex. And there's no merchandise. Real cheap, $2.99 to get in. Yeah, because they wanted you to buy the records, That's what wasn't a thing unto itself. Live music got turned into this big dog and pony show, Nuremberg rally kind of shit. Right. And a lot of stuff gets lost in that.
Yeah.
There's a Live Doors album. The guy into the show is making fun of that, right? Take the escalator trip. And I mean, everybody knew it and stuff, but to me, that's what the movement, especially when I look back on it now at 64 years old, it was reaction against the arena rock.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. Actually, I was just talking with Will Johnson, and he actually said that specifically because the album he chose was The Replacements' Let It Be. And for him, listening to that as a teenager in 1984 when it came out, that was his kind of turning point in his life. And that's exactly the way he determined that he wanted to live his career as a musician, kind of following that influence of theirs being like anti-establishment, anti-arena rock, anti-big hair MTV,
Right. I mean, it was profound on us. And the reason I brought that up was because on another level, I had the same situation with the bass guitar. Found out that's where you put the retarded friend. It's like a right field in Little League. Because one thing, the acoustics of those, they were built for sports and shit, And
Yeah.
sound systems hadn't developed as much. And yeah, the bass player, fuck, I thought it was a guitar with 4 strings. That's why I played for the first couple of years. I didn't even know it had bigger strings.
Right. You didn't know how to tune it.
Lower. Baja, right? Bajo.
Right.
Bass in Spanish. Alto, upper. Yeah. This is
crazy.
Actually in Alto, California. Baja California is still part of Mexico. But anyway, a real inferiority complex. And then this idea the drummers were all idiots, right? And it's fucking rhythm music. It was just the priorities, the value systems were so fucked up. Anyway,
yeah,
that's why that record, Richard Hell and the Voidoid Blank Generation, was profound. I could not believe a bass player was running a band and writing the songs.
Right.
Now I found out, Willie Dixon. I mean, there's Charles Mingus, although Charles Mingus never wrote on the bass, he wrote on piano. But there was, then Jack Bruce, I didn't even realize,
Right,
he's the guy who made a voice in a lot of the electric bass players I learned from were overseas. Here, I couldn't really hear him. When I met D. Boona, he only knew for rock bands, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I could not hear the bass on those records, and so that's why I got into wearing flat. I looked at the covers, and saw the singer's shirts, oh, Mark Bolan likes a boa. This guy likes this plaid thing. So that's how I got into wearing flannels. I was hoping D. Boon would still like me because I could not hear what the bass guy was doing. But overseas, Jack Bruce.
Yep. The Cream.
Whistle, Geezer Butler, Andy Frazier, Trevor Boulder. Even Pete Quaife and Chaz Chandler, Animals, Kinks. The producers mixed the bass up. Maybe not so much Rolling Stones, but a lot of it.
Really?
Yeah, and that's how I could learn. Over here, the only guys I could really hear at first was James Jamerson, because the Motown music was built, R&B music was built. This became very important to the Minutemen. D. Boon used it. In fact, this is what he called the political part of the band. He thought lyrics was just thinking out loud. But he thought by bringing up the drums and the bass guitar, like with R&B, soul, Motown, he's some kind of like egalitarian thing.
Yeah.
Share the musical wealth kind of thing. And but for me, it was because that's where D-Boon got that trebly kind of stuff. I mean, he was very influenced by Bob Quine and Ivan Julian on that record. But before that, right, it's all John Fogerty. And then I turned him on to Buck Dharma. Blue Oyster Cult, he got into Buck Dharma.
Oh, okay.
But, those were that's why it's kind of strange. His influence gave him the trippy style. And then getting we're different than a lot of the bands of the movement because we were playing before. A lot of those guys were learning right when it started, People right in front of people. It was really trippy that way.
Right. So,
I got to end up being friends with Richard Hell. He showed me the first song he wrote, You Gotta Lose. It's actually there was a 7-inch before.
The EP, yeah. Right.
Yeah, it had Blank Generation, Another World, and a song called You Gotta Lose. And he told me You Gotta Lose was his first bass line he ever wrote.
Oh, cool. I gotta re-listen to that.
Yeah.
So you became friends. You became friends with Richard Hell at some point. When was that?
Yeah. The first few times I met him, I couldn't even talk to him. I was so afraid, so scared. I actually called him. There was an ad in Cream magazine, Call Hell. Answered the phone. I got scared. I said, "Is this Hell?" He said, "Yeah." And I got scared and hung up. Then later in the early 80s, because Thurston knew him.
Yep.
In fact, I couldn't, when I first met Thurston, because he told me, you know, he lived in New York City, so he could see the Voidoids at gigs. Because Richard Hill, they didn't play here until like 82, 83. So I only knew him as records.
Yeah.
In the 70s. And I'll tell you, I put a picture that the sleeve has a bunch of pictures. And I cut one of them out and I taped it on my bass. Man, that was like a line in the sand here in Pedro, man. I can't tell you how negative people were about the movement.
In Pedro specifically.
Not just no. You think, yeah, it's a backwater and stuff, okay. No, more than Square Johns, it was the rock and rollers. They really didn't, so-called rock and rollers. Just look at Little Richard, you know, come on. Being weird and shit goes way back 50s and all that. But for some reason, you had to be, you know, humans like to get all orthodox and shit, and they don't. And I gotta admit, a lot of artistic people. Some stuff was provocative theater. That maybe it wasn't totally music.
Right.
So fucking what? I'll tell you, my sister took me to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I saw a lot of people from the first scene at those things. So it's that kind of aesthetic, right? Like kind of take over. They know all the words, and the time warp dance thing, and throwing the toast and all that. Same kind of idea, but bringing it to music and like. Some of the whatever established rock and rollers, man, they did not dig that shit. That's why we didn't play a lot of clubs. We had to play bars or rented to ethnic halls where people didn't know because it was such bad opinion. I gotta say, almost all that's gone now, but it was like fucking really lame. It got so bad that we couldn't wear punk clothes anymore. But first we to the thrift store and tore them up, pinned them back together, painted on them and shit. Give us so much fucking shit for that shit. We had to. Well, we're gonna keep the punk part in our head. These motherfuckers.
That's all. That's all that's important. That's all you need.
Couldn't tell anybody at work, anybody at school. You didn't have to go to high school. I can imagine the hardcore kids, junior high and shit, and deal with that. That's probably why it all got kind of uniform music-wise.
Right.
A big change with the movement, 70s and 80s. Yeah.
Interesting.
70s, it's fucking almost anything goes. 80s, it's all fast guitar and young men shit out each other. Even the dancing, right, goes from pogo up and down to slamming left to right.
Right. So what? I was wondering. I read this quote from Richard Hell, and he had stated that his influences at that time, before he wrote the Voidoids music, was Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the Stooges, and the Velvet Underground. Now, so considering that information, with Richard Hell citing the Stooges as an influence, and you citing Richard Hell as an influence on you, how do you feel about that circular progression of inspiration? Like, especially because you met him.
Stooges was. My belief is truly there would have been no movement without Stooges. They were essential.
Oh, yeah.
They were doing the stuff before that name was given to the movement, you know. And in fact, we couldn't believe the name. Punk in Pedro is about, it's a guy getting fucked in jail for cigarettes. And we couldn't believe that somebody would call their music that. But whatever. When we saw it, we could tell that people took a parallel universe where they didn't have to be judged.
Right.
But Stooges, there's something about them. Also, Captain Beefheart. There were people in the 60s that were setting things up for us in the 70s. It's a weird collision kind of thing, Like I said, rock and roll got all detoured by arena rock, I think.
Right.
It had to go find itself again because, just the circumstance, the situation. So I tell people the old days was a lot about people. So, Richard Hell, Stooges. I think the new days are too. Music, it's about connections. You're right, Foreman. Hopefully not totally copying, but they had a band before television. Him and Dom Verlaine. It's called the Neon Boys.
Right.
And it sounds a lot like Rolling Stone.
Mm-hmm.
He's got another He's got another version of Love Comes in Spurts, and then one called That's All I Know Right Now on there. And it's really trippy. But, you know, Ivan Julian, one of the guitar players, said he was way into Keith Richards' style of guitar.
You're right, right.
And he told me what I had him on my show a month ago, and he was talking about him and Bob Quine, and they were actually trying to do Yardbirds. You know, Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, or Eric Clapton,
right.
and Jeff
Dueling
Beck.
guitar type thing, yeah.
Yeah. You know, Richard helped put them together. You know, he's actually from Kentucky.
Right. I saw that. And he put that band together. I mean, what? So Ivan responded to, no, it was Ivan that responded to an ad in.
No, I'm talking way before that.
Oh, okay.
Before that, he gets sent to a perform school. That's where he meets Tom Miller, who actually started on saxophone. They run away to New York City in 1970.
Oh, and that was Tom Verlaine.
Yeah, they made this band. He had a friend, Tom had a friend named Billy Feek, and he ends up the drummer. But they don't do any gigs. They don't want to do gigs until they get another guitar player, that Dick Lloyd later on. Right? They call this band the Neon Boys. But then when they become television, they get they start doing gigs, Dick Lloyd. And he got kind of enchanted with television, thought it was losing the rock and roll part. So he quits, and then he makes a band around the same time New York Dolls broke up. That was a big band that influenced too.
Oh, yeah.
Told me they even got the idea for the CBGB kind of residency things from the New York Dolls and that Mercer Arts Center stuff. So the New York Dolls was a big part of the early city. So he makes a band with Johnny Thunders called the Heartbreakers. Band from Gainesville, Florida. Same name. And then after that, I heard this from other people. Richard didn't tell me, but he kind of got kicked out. I guess he tried to take over the band. I'm going to do all the singing, and then they kicked him out. They got Billy Rath. That's when he makes Voidoids.
Right.
Ivan Julian said, yeah, he found an ad. I think in the Village Voice.
I think so, yeah. So, I was going to ask you, back you're a vast knowledge of information. I mean, everything I know about you is that you know your shit about music, and it's very evident. But back in '77, when you are first kind of experiencing this music, like the Richard Hell and the Voidoids album, Blank Generation, what was your intake like then? Like, how much music are you taking in, and how much research are you doing?
76 is when we graduated high school. 76 is when the television album comes out. I remember it was the same month as the Boston album. I'm looking at both covers. Okay. One is like a fucking Spaceship City guitar. The other one's these guys sitting there with little Fender amps. Nobody did this shit then.
Right.
It was such a contrast. And then I did have the Patti Smith single where he's playing piano, and her version of Hey Joe, and the other side was Piss Factory.
Right.
He sang like her. It was just so trippy. And they got Fred Smith on bass by this time. But some of those songs go back to the Richard Hell days.
Yep.
So the single was out then. That's when the single came out. Terry York put it out. Put out the first television single too. It was Little Johnny Jewel. One side part A, the other side part B. That was trippy, man. It's so much different. But then what it was, there was a record store between Pedro and Long Beach. In Long Beach, I was going to Cal State Long Beach, learning electronics. Right? And it was called Zeta London. This guy, Mike, his mom ran it, and it was imports. So they kind of had a line on the move, stuff from overseas, you know, like spacey music, like Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze, Can and this stuff. Well, this is where the first punk records. So you didn't know any of this shit. You would get stuff, but they were Econo. 7 inches were $2, you know.
Yeah.
So you go by the name or the cover and just roll a dice.
Right.
So that's the research. It's actually listening to shit and going to the gigs and, you know, experiencing the shit, because nobody was writing about it. A little bit in Cream magazine, but not much.
Yeah.
You know, and then there were zines. But again, that's all about the movement. So Slash magazine, Flipside were the big ones in SoCal. So that's kind of some research. And the way the guys wrote, you could tell they were super fans and shit. They'd be all foaming at it. So make you want to check out all this shit. That was part of the thing. Could tell these people at the gigs were weirdos and didn't fit in with square John situations. But that didn't mean they were stupid or not curious. They're really interesting people.
Of course.
Clothes. Well, that's what happened. I got, caught up in the wave.
Right. And it was a social thing. So you were kind of like just going out to the stores and talking to the people and
multiple things. Social, artistic, entertainment. I think in a weird way too, you got to understand we're boys in the 60s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Civil rights, free speech, anti-war movement. By the time we get to, of age in the 70s, that's all over, man.
Right.
The way you could be provocative is a strange movement.
Sure.
And there's a lot of factors that got caught up in it. First thing you had to do was get rid of the fucking Berlin Walls in your own mind about what is got talent, what is good, existential things.
Yeah.
Such consumer motherfucking genre, gulag, Dachau shit. Fuck, if it was physical, you could take a hammer to it. Right? But it's in your own mind. Stuff was built up with weird ass consumerism. So in a way, it was just trying to get a handle on your own destiny, your own, what do I really like?
Right.
Don't know until you fucking see it or hear it, right? Then you make up your own mind.
Yeah.
Into this other fucking thing too. Maybe the whole world would be easier for us to understand if we split into gigs and flyers. Because we could not believe how intense a punk gig was. They're very short, half hour, short songs.
Right.
Really immediate, nothing between you and the gig goer. And then you'd be watching Germs and they get done and there's Pat standing right. You can rap with these guys. It was so trippy like that. Yeah, it was a really inclusive kind of thing. When movements are very small, it's like that.
Cool. Yeah. Mike, what's your record collection like? Because obviously you've been buying a lot of records ever since the 70s.
Well, things changed with digital, right?
Oh, okay. Did you convert over?
Yeah. And then stuff comes off the, Bandcamp, and it's just always digital now.
Right. So you don't
Goes onto the iPod. The iPod's got 8,000 songs.
Oh, I bet. So you don't have much of a record collection anymore?
But I was people, especially people give me, right? And I make records, but I don't really go to record stores anymore. But we didn't have online ways of listening in those days. You had to go to record stores. Most of them closed. Right. Most of them closed. That's why I always try to put out a release on record store twice a year now.
Right.
Because there was something, that experience is kind of like the club. It's people talking to the guy, Mike Zed, or, working the counter. Hey, what's this about? This whole human interaction thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell you what it's like because, you don't have that dynamic of bullshit,
So what is your relationship with vinyl records like today?
Well, I put out a couple every year.
Right. But I mean, like, as far as you're listening, are you listening to them still or not really?
When I listen, well, I got the shows, so I'm listening to music. Usually from my guests, stuff I find around. I don't play mersh stuff.
Oh, okay.
So, I want to get back to the gigs and the flyers. So we thought everything, either something's a gig or it's a flyer. So the gig is actually playing the music you write with your friend and you're going to perform it for people. So everything else is about letting them know about that to get them there. So like doing a spiel like this, or make it a flyer and put it on a telephone pole, even make it a record. That's a flyer to get people. It just changed everything, the way we understood about music. And I still use those ethics or whatever values these days. And like a lot of things, once that hatch got forced open, it never got shut back closed. Which is good, I think.
Yeah.
So died.
So how do you feel about the vinyl resurgence and the whole record sales thing? Like, the price gouging for like vintage records. Like some of those
old. So much.
You do like it?
No, I don't.
The old
You
Minutemen
know,
records, like all those old Minutemen records are so expensive now. I mean, like double nickels, you find a copy of that from the original pressing, and it's like, over 100, almost $200.
yeah, no, humans do this fetish, man. Talk to go to a guitar forum, and it's always the right gear,
Yeah.
An old Fender, you know how much those fucking things go for?
Oof. Yeah.
I have
Thousands.
a 56 P bass that I got for $200 back in the early 80s. That thing, imagine what it's worth. Humans do this. They fetishize stuff. And I don't think vinyl is, a little different than that. They'll do it with whatever, Matchbox cars.
With everything. I mean, everyone collects something, people make things more valuable than they ever really were.
Right. And then that becomes a business unto itself.
Right. Well, I sell records, so I mean, I'm all for it, kind of. I mean, I think it's silly, but I mean, I'm not gonna complain because it's what I work in,
Look, without the record store, I tell you, it was huge to the movement. It was huge to the Minutemen.
Right.
Going into Zed of London, not knowing what you wanted to get, just checking it out, talking to people, looking at covers. There's the other thing about the vinyls, they're physical, and the artwork, the covers are part of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of
they're intriguing, they're alluring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was a boy, there was a new invention called the 8-track.
Oh yeah.
Sending a dime to the Columbia Music Club. They send you 10 of them. They send you one a month. If you don't send it back, you have to buy it. And so I actually got into 8-tracks, which was fucking really hard to learn bass on because you can't lift the needle up.
Yeah, you gotta like play it all the way around on one side, right?
Well, it'd be 1/4. It's
right.
It's stereo, so they take the tape and make it an endless loop. And so whatever the total time, it was 36 minutes, right? It'd be 9 minutes a track. At 9 minutes, click, it's going to... So it'd be right in the middle of a song and fade out and click.
Right. That's horrible.
Editing habits with the Minutemen with our short... Actually, we got that short idea song from Wire Pink Flag.
Oh, yeah.
First album, yeah. That album had a huge impact on us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know that.
People, if we use that format, not try to play like them, but use that format of the small stuff, people wouldn't know. Because we were embarrassed that we knew Creedence and Blue Oyster Cult, because these other cats were such inspiring us, like the Yurtles. And Yurtles didn't even know. I think they drew straws who was going to play what.
Yeah.
So organic, Yeah, we love this idea. The movement,
Right.
It wasn't the style as much. That was up to each group. But this idea of just, being artists.
Right. So while I am a bass player too, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about bass. Was that the first?
Let me say one more thing about the flyer.
Sure.
The idea of the records is flyers.
Yeah. How so?
More than that. At my age now, they're documents. We didn't make those things. I couldn't hear D Boon, you know what I mean? But that's what, when you're at that age, you're only thinking of the moment. You're not thinking about tomorrow's as much. So that flyer thing, it was kind of a short-sighted idea, but yeah, they're documents. I go to discogs.com, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the threads of history, right?
Sure.
Okay, ask me about bass.
Sure. So bass, I'm pretty sure that's the first instrument you played, or am I wrong?
No, D Boon's mom put me on the bass. She wanted, the first day I went to his house, she played guitar when she was young. So she had D Boon. We learned from this hippie guy, Roy Mendez Lopez, who lived in his car. And he took lessons. And she said, you guys are going to have a band and you're going to play bass. And I didn't even know what fucking bass was, okay? That's why I told you I played a guitar with 4 strings. That's what I thought they had thinner necks.
Right.
Such an idiot. I remember that I didn't see a bass till I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
Or 15, almost 16. And I was tripping on it. I couldn't believe it. It was my first week in 10th grade, right? So got the homeroom and I was bragging to some guy, but yeah, I play bass and all this. My friend, we got it bad. And this guy was in Chuck Sound of Music here in Pedro, now gone many years. But anyway, I'm looking at him. He sees me tripping on this thing. I go, look at this fucking thing. He goes, I thought you told me you were a bass player. And I said, I am. Well, that's a bass. And I said, I know that. I did not know that. I couldn't fucking believe how big the strings were. It was like, oh, fuck. No wonder there's only 4 of them. So I worked it. I had this job tying LA Times, especially the Sunday ones, right? The big fat ones, this machine that would tie strings around them and shit, getting ready for the delivery guy.
Yeah.
I got $100 up and I bought my first bass, a K. Kind of looked like an EB3 Gibson.
Yeah. Okay.
Man, you could stick almost your whole head between the strings and the fretboard. The action was so fucking bad. It would kill my fingers. So
yeah.
So that's how I got on bass. It was his mom.
Right.
And it was like, because the way I met him was I had to leave the Navy housing here. My pop got stationed on the Enterprise, the first nuclear. He was a nuclear engine room guy.
Oh, okay.
Ended up a chief, which is like kind of sergeant. So he gets stationed on Enterprise, and home base is Alameda up in this, East Bay City, 400 miles north. And my mom said, fuck this moving shit. So we couldn't live in the Navy housing. So we had this new proj next to the old proj here in Pedro called Park Western Estates. D. Boone lived in Park Western. This was from like the 40s, that proj. And, it's the early 70s, so there's not a lot of guns, but there's fighting and stuff. So she wanted to sit in the house after school. It was like Econo childcare thing. You never imagined that you could do a band, real life, right? Because the gigs were these huge. It was just, but she's very, actually with the Minutemen too. George Hurley's ma let us practice her. The ma's very important in the Minutemen. It's. Have you seen that? There's on YouTube.com. There's a documentary called We Jam Econo.
Yeah, the Minutemen.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
They talk about the moms and stuff, and that actually shaped us. If you want to know the truth.
Yeah.
D. Boone's ma, Margie Boone, is responsible for a lot. Probably why I'm talking to you today.
Yeah.
Isn't it a trip?
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, I'm so happy that they were so supportive. You think about some of the parents back then in the day, and I imagine that they were kind of ambivalent to whatever their kids were doing. They were just like, go outside and play until it gets dark and come back in, right?
Yeah, she wasn't like that at all.
That's good. Well, that's great, man.
They found another dead body by Harbor Lake. That was always her scare warning. And there was once, a body found by Harbor Lake. This slough,
I'm sure.
Bixby Slough. But she was, she was scared for her kids.
Of course.
In a way, but also kind of artistic, right? You go, and yeah, other Ma's, in Proges, Ma's are the big thing, right?
Yeah.
They're usually very strong and stuff. And they'd all tell her, man, how can you stand all that racket and shit? Well, I know where my son is. That's what she would tell him.
Yeah. That's good, man.
We're talking like after school, 3 hours in a row of American Woman, but that one fucking riff over and over. She didn't hate it,
man. So before that happened, before she put you on the bass, what was your interest in music like? Were you learning anything, or did you want to play anything?
Those days, big radio FM was just starting.
But did you want to play any music yourself?
I'm gonna tell you.
Okay.
The way you knew about music, Kano, was AM radio. FM radio was just starting to come on, and so everything I knew was off of AM radio. So first single I bought was American Woman. Music, didn't have it really much in my family. I learned later my mom did singing when she was a teenager. I remember she sang a one show when we were in upstate New York on a local station. But I didn't really have music in my family, that much. And so, no, the music thing was all D. Boone. For D. Boone, I remember a couple times in the garage with baseball bats, lip syncing to a record maybe with some friends in Navy housing. I remember going a birthday party. Military was the 60s. It was integrated and stuff. And In fact, it was really trippy when I got out of Navy housing. I couldn't believe how civilians lived, like at ethnic groups, you know. So I remember there was a birthday party with Jim Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and Proud. I remember dancing and singing that with my friends. Music, you know what I mean? It wasn't like something I'm going to do this. That comes with D-Boon. But that's early. That's 12 years old.
Yeah, okay.
Just out of 6th grade. We started 7th grade together. That summer is when we start trying to learn Creedence songs. And this guy is teaching us stuff that lived in his car. Roy Mendez Lopez. He's teaching us stuff. Teaching him, and then D-Boon's showing me stuff. And there were some U.S. rock guys. The Blue Oyster Cult guy, Joe Bouchard, and Dennis Dunaway in the Alice Cooper band, I could hear a little bit. But, man, most U.S. bass, I could not fathom.
Yeah.
That R&B stuff. Yeah. So
Weird.
That helped me. But when the movement comes, everybody's learning. It's a level playing field.
Yeah.
So you could really learn bass from punk rock records and gigs.
Yeah.
People,
go.
Yeah, I'm learning from, here I've been copying records and shit. I'm learning off Lorna Doone. A lot of the Hollywood bands, the 70s punk bands had women in them, and a lot of them were bass players. And I was learning by watching these. But I had already been playing with D-Boon and stuff, But this is when we're first writing songs. We had a band before the Minutemen called The Reactionaries. So that's where I write my first songs. As a teenager, I only wrote one song. It's called Mr. Bass, King of Outer Space. I can't remember it exactly, but it was something about doing a bass solo and blowing the rest of the band off the stage. I had issues. I didn't understand about bass. But then, I am so grateful D-Boon's mom put me on bass. It is just I don't even go to 5 strings. There's so much to learn on this month. And the politics are really beautiful. You look good, making the rest of the band look good.
Yeah.
Love that.
Interesting. Hey, speaking about punk, right? So I found this quote from Craig Leon. He was one of the producers of, what was it? I think the EP for Richard Hell, right?
Yeah, I think...
yeah,
I think he produced the first Ramones album.
Okay, well, so there's this quote.
Joey's brother puts on this lymphoma benefit, and he had me and Clem Burke be the rhythm section to celebrate the 40th anniversary, and I met that guy.
Oh, okay.
Peter Chrome. Clem came to my pad Peter for 3 weeks. We cracked the fuck out of that thing. It was kind of hard to learn. Like Stooges, very simple, but you got to really learn it, man.
Yeah, man, you got to feel it. You got to feel that rhythm.
Yeah. All these chord changes aren't going to help you. You got to really get at the heart of those songs. But anyway, What did he say?
So Quine, he says Quine brought an element of New York to the whole thing that wasn't punk, but it became punk because it was so out there. And he looked like a guy who was a university professor or something, and he had that mentality. He was a really soft-spoken, coherent kind of guy. He wasn't like anyone's image of a rock and roller. He was
a lawyer.
Was he a legitimate lawyer?
I got to record one time with them.
Right.
Joanna, Visions of Joanna Friezat. And he told me he's actually from Cleveland, Akron, Ohio. He taped every Cleveland Velvet Underground gig. Like 23, 28 gigs. They're infamous cassette tapes. Right. But he ended up a lawyer. He told me the first guy he saw play electric guitar was Buddy Holly.
Oh, wow.
And
weird,
that was the year I was born, 1957, Sputnik. So
crazy.
Look, punk had all these weird kind of things.
Right. So what my question is, what is punk for you? What was it for you then, and what is it for you now?
Like I said, a parallel universe.
Yeah. Then, how do you feel
about it? It's a state of mind. It was not a style of music.
Right. I agree with that completely. But so what about now?
What it meant for me back then. That's what it means for me now.
Same thing.
Yeah, it didn't change. It's more developed thinking. Like I said, I brought in this idea. Hey, it was a reaction to arena rock. Didn't come out of anywhere,
Yeah.
Wade was trying to find Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, old rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know what happened to rock and roll, right? Pat Boone sells way more Tutti Fruities than Little Richard.
Well,
his version was for the bedroom, and Pat Boone's was for the living room. Believe that. So that's what it is. Only thing new is you finding out about it. You know? That's punk to me. You know, that's punk.
Yeah.
It's not a certain haircut or a certain. So if those people were fooled by that, Bob Quine to me totally fit in. Because
I would
these
agree.
people, especially the rock and rollers of when the movement was first starting, were caught up into this cartoon image of one thing.
Right.
Bullshit. It was everybody had their own version.
Right.
Which is why it didn't die. No fucking new wave, right?
Yeah.
Right, but there still is punk.
All right.
They wanted to kill punk with new wave, right? That was the thing from the industry. Then they tried to kill it with something called alternative. That's gone too. All this cement. In fact, who uses that word? I told people not to use that word. These fucking right-wing idiots now use that word. What's alternative to sound? Silence? I mean, it's insane. But some of that shit, because they couldn't deal with that. They thought punk was a turnoff, just the word. Because it used to have a bad reputation, you know.
Right, like you were saying.
Scene. It became a whole thing, you know, a living organism. Labels, zines, touring in the van, all this shit, you know.
Right.
That to me is punk. Which
Good.
is kind of vaudeville, which is kind of Walt Whitman, 1855, first edition of Leaves of Grass. DIY, put that out himself.
Yeah.
It really didn't start with Ramones. It didn't start with Richard Hell. It did, you know, it's all links in a chain.
It's all been an evolution.
With humans, yeah.
Yeah.
So much
I agree with that.
Humans. All the good stuff, there's suck-ass shit, right?
Yeah, I think it's just that, you know, like the press kind of waters things down and kind of like, you know, reaches to the masses and tells them one thing. And so, the majority of people that are not, you know, like intellectuals or artists or musicians that are, you know, conscious about where this music came from and you know, all of this whole subgenre and this whole lifestyle, they have this one understanding of it being like, oh, punk's bad. It's kind of like, you know, dirty people that play stupid music that is like really short and loud and it's abrasive and you know, I don't think that it's that at all. I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's been an evolution ever since rock and roll started, and now here we are now, just like, you know, everything is kind of punk. Like anything can be punk almost.
Man, you read about Downbeat magazine talking about 60s John Coltrane music. They crucified that man. They said he was playing anti-jazz.
Yeah.
That last interview he did with Frank Kosky, you know, he doesn't give it back. He laughs. He goes, what got us was like they tried to act like we didn't know what we were doing.
Right. Yeah, traditionalists, right? That's who ruin it. People that think like, oh no, this is a certain thing.
The big joke is Thelonious Monk would never have won the Thelonious Monk contest. Right? They want to put the shit in a glass box.
Yeah.
Right? And have people charge admission so they can stare at these. It's weird. Humans, they embrace all this innovation and stuff, but just for a little bit, and everything else is jive and heresy.
Right. As soon as someone starts to turn it a little bit, being like, well, yeah, this is jazz, but if I do this to it now everyone else is freaking out and saying that's not jazz anymore, but it's just part of the evolution.
Called it anti-jazz.
Right. So weird.
Fucking assholes. So can you imagine what, you know, this is a man who did like 10, 12 hours practice a day. Imagine a garage band.
Yeah.
But the Stooges told me this shit happened to them.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
You know, and I think probably all humanity had this shit. There's the people, you know, a friend of mine in Japan said, you know, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean,
heads and no one taking responsibility, no one taking any risks, especially with artistic expression.
Right. So what we should get into this record. I wanted to talk with you about the record Richard Hell and the Voidoids, Blank Generation.
Yeah.
I was gonna try to ask you like at least one question per song.
Yeah.
So
all of my spiel I'm telling you is kind of connected with this.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I mean, it absolutely is.
Right. I get it in '77, right when it came out. I was ready for it because the 7-inch, right? So I'm ready for this album, and the album just blew me away. So the first song is "Love Comes in Spurts," and I knew this song. I knew the Heartbreakers. It blew me away, man. the guitar playing was so wild, but also his bass playing was so trippy.
Yeah, yeah. What did you think about that? Because like that
Really
recording,
trippy.
I mean, like, because you got the bass doing one thing. So if you're honing in on the bass, trying to hear what the bass man's doing,
Oh well, there's an
but then you
intro
got the
in
two
that song,
guitars
right?
on either speaker, right? You got
Right, right. But there's this weird intro, right? It's kind of Chuck Berry, and this is one thing that's the duality about Bob Quine. He is, if Ivan's channeling Keith, Bob Quine's kind of channeling Chuck Berry. And Johnny Thunders was a lot about Chuck Berry, right? Of course,
right.
He is also. But anyway, there's this weird intro. And that's the other side, right? Of the Blank Generation.
Right.
And the bass is like boom, 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 boom. It's so bizarre. It goes into
It
this,
is. Right.
Kind of a takeoff. I found out later that Jack Kerouac, the Beat Generation, he's kind of making a satire of, but I learned that years later.
Right. Okay.
Love comes in spurts. To me, that was them really taking on this New York Dolls with this wild ass guitar playing. That was more like the stuff we were seeing at the gigs, like Pat Smear. The guitar was so wild, both of those guys. It was hard to tell who was who, really.
Cool. All right, so you actually already answered my question. You already kind of like covered what I was going to get to.
The first song, right? Oh, here's the other thing: the singing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded like a cartoon. He told me about. See, in the old days, to get a copyright, you'd have to have something called a lead sheet. So you'd hire a piano player, and then you'd sing them the song, and they'd write out a manuscript, right? They'd file that with the copyright. He said when he did that, the piano player started laughing. He says, "You're not singing any notes." This is Richard Hell told me years later.
Yeah.
I remember hearing the thing. Yeah, and like I couldn't see them, right? He wouldn't play here until '83 or something. Bob Quine wasn't even in that band
at the time. Yeah.
Drummer too. Yeah, Maikki goes to the Ramones. But anyway, that singing was so wild. Like he really meant it, man. He really fucking wanted you to believe every word, blow your fucking mind.
Sure. Right. Well, he was a poet too.
Wrestling, in vaudeville, selling it. He sold it, man.
Mm-hmm.
He sold it. That was such balls out way of singing, balls out way of playing guitar.
Yeah.
And I hear D Boon, not copying them, but it was like, man, it was the Geo for the guitar, man. It was wild ass.
Yeah. All right.
Pat Smear was the only guy. A lot of guys. It was funny about punk, the Hollywood bands in the '70s. A lot of them, it was like them playing acoustic guitar, but they were electric guitars, but they strummed all 6 strings. Nobody did that in Rita Rock kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Dharma didn't do that. John Fogerty didn't. Yeah, where you strum all the strings. That was trippy.
All right.
But anyway, that song was just a trip. It was a mind blow. It was like Vast open the hatch, and then what's after that? Betrayal Takes Two.
Liars Beware.
Liars Beware. Oh yeah, that one too. Look how he sings that.
It's all. I mean, it's all intense. Yeah. Super intense.
The guitar lick is almost like saxophone. Later on, when Pettibone turns me on to John Coltrane, and I'm here, I actually thought John Coltrane was a punk rocker. I didn't know he was dead. I didn't know jazz at all, because of Navy housing and shit.
Yeah.
And first thing I heard was Ascension. But
okay.
It was weird, like this saxophone kind of thing mixed with like a country western. It was just this whole thing of being liberated out of genre. It was like everything they heard, they put into their songs.
Right.
Really crazy. And then it was belligerent music at authority figures, like I was telling you about us being kids in the 60s.
Yeah.
Liars Beware. He's talking about all those fucking assholes, right?
Well, actually, that's kind of what I was figuring. Like, I was listening to the song, and it sounds like young punk's take on attempted exploitation from business execs.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Shit. Yeah.
So what's your experience with big business been?
Big business. Oh, come on. It's duplicit like a lot. I mean, I was on Columbia, the oldest record. 1888.
Yeah.
Black cylinders. Columbia Records. Not too indie of a company. 11 years with SST. But I always look autonomy, right? Like in the old days.
Yeah.
If we were doing this, I'd probably have to use a payphone. AT&T,
Right.
not too indie of a company, right? But if they don't jump on the line, I don't hang up on them.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at them. You just have to, like on the freeway, right?
Yeah.
The limousine goes by, the Volkswagen goes by, as long as they don't jump in my window and grab the fucking steering wheel, stay in their lanes, right? That's the way I look at it, you know.
So how was it being on SST? Being, that was a young little company starting up, like.
Yeah, it's taught me everything I know. It gave me a lot of stuff to know about when I went to Columbia. I was very well prepared.
Oh, okay. That's
I never
great.
made any demos. My contract, was all artistically free. Just turned in finished masters, no suits in the Columbia people. I have no horror stories from those 14 years, and it's because of the 11 years with SST.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I never tied on puppet string. These guys
Yeah.
up here crying and shit. If they wanted to be part of it, now they got all sour grapes and shit. They should have protected themselves.
Right. Well, they didn't know any better. You had the experience. You were taught young.
Yeah. And I was also lucky. Yeah, being in the right place, right time.
I see. All right. So New Pleasure was the next song. There's nothing about it that I kind of really wanted to talk about.
That's got some great shit in it.
It does. I mean, all of it.
No, the devices that we start learning from this record. Yeah, there are a lot of fucking intense lyrics. But there's also the use of starts and stops. Too weak for life, you have become. These starts and stops.
Right.
I mean, it's not like Ramones. It's really trippy. It's using real simple devices along with complicated stuff. Anything's fair game. It's like the art's not pocket knife itself. It's what's going to be carved with the pocket knife. And that's what New Pleasure kind of shows you, man. It's got some really intense kind of things. And actually, to me, there's a song down at the Rock and Roll Club. It's kind of the other side of that same coin.
Okay.
A lot of similarities in that one.
Yeah.
Partner
Weird.
pull no gun. I just thought I had some, it's crazy ass, but I can imagine the feel of going into CBGBs, much different than arena rock. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
New Pleasure's a good. There's no filler on that record.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's all very unique, and especially considering the time. I mean, like when you're listening to this for the first time, like when it came out in '77. I mean, yeah, obviously it's mind blowing, and obviously it affected you because you go on to also create some of the most important and influential punk music around.
Well, I wonder what we would have done if we wouldn't have heard, Voidoids and Richard Hell.
Right.
Or even Blue Oyster Cult. They all lead up to that, right? Coltrane.
Yeah.
When you're listening to this cat and you don't know what that cat was listening to, and it's all like cascade fuck, but it's not a bad thing. It's one of the more positive things about humanity.
Right.
So what's after New Pleasure?
Betrayal Takes Two.
Yeah, of course, which is the ballad.
I guess so, yeah. If that's what you want to call it.
Ballad. It is such.
Not a ballad in the traditional sense, it's just a weird punk ballad.
Yeah, but it's almost got a waltz feel. It's really trippy. It's what it's doing is showing us punk. T Boone got a skater made a sticker made out of that. He read it in an interview where T Boone says, "For us, punk was what we made it to be. It was anything we wanted to make it to be." And we got the Geo, the Go comes from this album. Whatever they've wanted to fucking do, it seems they did it.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like they were confined at all. So that tune is not out of place in a way. Not at all. It's just another. It was a big quilt, right? It's one of the patches.
Mm-hmm. So I think that there's this one lyric that struck me in the song. It's the lyric, "The sensation of life was all around, was aroused in ourself."
Okay.
So that was at the top of the.
Yeah, but here's the trip about Richard Hell. Him and Tom Miller go to New York City. Their first goal wasn't to be musicians.
To be poets.
They wanted to be poets.
Right.
And in fact, they put out a poetry magazine where they right? Teresa, they have women names and shit. And the pictures have got them. Yeah, they were really into, and his name, Season of Hell, it comes from, right, Baudelaire.
Rimbaud, right?
Verlaine, and it's a guy who only did poems a couple of years. Rembrandt.
Rembrandt.
No, not
No,
Rembrandt.
Rimbaud.
Yeah, Rimbaud. Arthur
Rimbaud.
Rimbaud. It's running guns in Abyssinia, but he did, as a teenager, he's hanging with these guys and writing poems. That's what they were. So all of Richard Hell's lyrics are very poetic.
Right. So I mean,
The Burn. I mean, it's incredible. I loved it.
Yeah. So thinking about that one,
used as a shtick, being so stupid.
Right.
Not at all.
So that one line there, just that the sensation of life was aroused in ourself. I was wondering if that lyric kind of rang true to you and the Minutemen at the moment, at that time in '77, listening to this album.
It sounded like it was a romance thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seemed like a blues. The music's a blues. It's a blues ballad. Blues don't always mean sad. I think John Coltrane meant like serious. Miles Davis said blues to him was happy.
Right. I would agree with that.
The people from Africa heard the third different, fifth different and stuff. Blues doesn't. Yeah, blue notes are like. That's when you compare it to European music. You know, that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, Richard Hell, the poet. I loved all his words. Really They were very evocative. They always made me think.
All right.
Yeah.
So
especially the last song, Another World. Oh my God.
That's one that threw me, man. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't pinpoint that one at all.
And also the bass line to Another World is so fucking strange.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, before we go to that, let's do.
But that's the last one.
Yeah, Down at the Rock Club is the next one.
Right. And to me, that's like, yeah.
Yeah, and so
it's a total, good vibe. I remember going to the whiskey, go to the gigs, and you getting that electric feeling. People you don't know, but you kind of do know.
Yeah, and so right, and this song is like the epitome of rock and roll, punk culture. So it makes me wonder, like, you've played so many shows, so many stages. Do you prefer the big stage or the small club?
Of course, club.
Yeah, because you're still playing the clubs like every night. How often do you play?
Well, we've had this situation for 2 years. So
that's
starting
true.
to get back. 2 weeks, I start a 48 gig, 48-day tour.
Oh yeah, with MSSV.
More than a month. Call a tour more than a month. It'll be my 67th tour. I've been doing this for 40 years. But we're talking about 1977. When I heard that song was the soundtrack of my life. Going on the weekend, working all week. Some of these jobs, $1.65 an hour, $1.20 an hour.
Yeah.
Kano, man. So there was something about going to the gig, man. Going to these crazy ass music, talking to these crazy ass people. Loved it. Very inspired.
Right. That sounds great. So the next song is Who Says?
Yeah. This is kind of like a Liar Beware.
Yeah, well, kind of, I guess. I mean, it like what I got from it is that the chorus is the strongest part, and it kind of says it all. Like it says,
Liars Beware. He's got his chingazos, right? He's got his fists up. It's almost like cynical, almost a give up thing. Like there ain't no right. It's a perpetual dive. Why give up? Why even try, these motherfuckers? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost a bummer, huh?
I would. Well, it's like, that nihilistic kind of like apathy, right?
Little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's, songs are for, showing off feelings, expressing yourself. So it's not like a 5-year plan for a life or something.
Right.
It does. It probably has the most almost give up spirit of all the tunes on the record.
I think that's exactly right.
Music. Again, this idea of using stabs. And then the drum beat, is almost woolly bully. Boop, boop, pop, pop, boop, boop, pop, pop, boop.
You're right.
Don't be L7. 1965. Also had the Espanol count in, right? Uno, dos, tres. These guys are listening to old rock and roll.
Right. Well, it wasn't that old
This
then.
jazzy,
Yeah.
crazy ass shit.
Right.
It's such a mix, such a fucking thing, man. So
Right.
if it did have one of the currents running through it was kind of a bummer, that was okay because it had other stuff too.
Right. Now,
So you got to
so
have all them kind of radiations and stuff.
yeah, yeah. So
Voidoid, it's like Stooges. Stooges music is full of stuff. That's how Voidoid music was for me, full of stuff.
sure, sure. So the song "Who Says," the sentiment that we kind of got to was that it's the same punk intensity of saying, "What does it really matter?" Right. So, so when someone says that to you, like when someone
I
says,
don't
"What's
think
the
there's
point?"
one way of being punk. I think there's the Latin punk being punk can say a lot of different things. It's just one way of saying something.
No, right. But when someone says to you, like, "What's the point?" Like that kind of like apathy that they're kind of giving up. It's like, what's your response?
Yeah, well, if he would have really given up, he wouldn't have wrote the song.
Well, I'm saying in general, like if someone were to come to you being like, "Hey, what's the fucking point of all this shit?"
To express yourself.
Well,
I told you, music for me was very personal. It was to be with D Boon.
right, right.
So I was
Well,
very focused. I was very focused. Knew
yeah,
exactly what I was. I wasn't really trying to service a lifestyle or something. I wanted to be with my friend in an expressive environment. And it seemed
right,
this movement was the most open in this, and also very inspiring. Voidoids is inspiring. When I hear Voidoids, I want to make a band. I want to write a song. He wrote that.
right.
I want to write something. That's what it did to me. Lightning rod,
Yeah, yeah. But I just think like, like there are depressed people in the world, right? And I think that, when like Richard Hell wrote this, let's just say that maybe that was coming from a depressed type of perspective.
An album I really like? It's very fucking down. It's called Berlin by Lou Reed.
Oh my God, that's freaking
The
crazy
kids,
downer.
the bed. Yeah, oh my God.
I
That's
love
what
that
I'm
record.
saying. These aren't instructions for 5-year plans, They're emotional expressions.
Right.
So, that, yeah, some of them are really but why do I like it? I don't really like bummer things. That's just the way Jack Bruce is on some of them songs. But
Yeah, yeah.
fucking it was produced by
Oh, fuck, what's his name? The guy
most stuff
from
he does I don't like at all. Yeah, he did some Alice Cooper and
Yeah, yeah, Alice
Promise and
Cooper.
Kiss.
Yes, Ezrin,
It's
that's right.
weird about that, right? A work comes out and it hits you. You don't exactly know why. So if you start quantizing it, things don't make a lot of sense. Right.
Right, okay.
I am a positive, optimistic person, but sometimes I like a bummered out thing. Not because it is a bummer, it just seems that it went with it. That's what the artist did.
Right, right. And it's equally like emotionally powerful, I mean, like whereas like some punk music makes you want to jump up and fucking and scream, some of that downer music like Lou Reed's Berlin, I mean, it makes you want to cry, but it's still a beautiful, emotive expression.
But Lou Reed, Velvet Underground was one of those bands doing punk like Stooges in the 60s, and they didn't give it that name yet, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct.
It's my feeling.
Right.
Yeah,
So
what's after that one?
side two, man. First side two is Blank Generation.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I already talked about Black Generation with that weird intro, remember? And it's kind
Yeah.
of if there's a song called The Beat Generation, Jack Kerouac, I guess for booze, money, and shit, would read his poems over Steve Allen playing piano and shit. You ever heard that?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, there is. You can find it on youtube.com.
All right.
And you can actually hear that melody line. And I didn't know this at the time, okay? But it's a shuffle, okay? It's a fucking shuffle. But
Yeah.
that's because he's sourcing the original. But
right, right.
there's no problem with a shuffle, right? You show me a hardcore band doing a shuffle, okay? These guys,
Right.
they played anything they fucking wanted to.
So this was based on that song "The Beat Generation" by Rod McEwen.
Yeah, no, Jack Kerouac.
Well, the Beat Generation was the title taken from Kerouac's fictional novel, right? But the song that Richard Hell took this from, like kind of like pulled this from, was kind of like a parody on.
I've heard this. Yeah, I've heard this recording of Jack Kerouac reading his poetry.
Okay.
over that lick.
Oh, okay.
That's
I
what
wonder if that came after the fact though, because
no, it's in the he got killed in the what 68.
was it? I don't know.
Jack Kerouac died. Yeah, he died young. The alcohol,
Oh, okay.
He's
Weird.
drinking
All
a
right.
quart a day.
All right. Well,
And I tell you, Tom Miller, Richard Meyer, they were at first poets. Poetry is really big in their life,
right.
and it's in the Voidoids big time.
Right. So I read a quote, or at least I read a quote from Richard Hell saying that essentially, I'm going to paraphrase it, that that he wrote Blank Generation kind of in the hopes of writing a song like My Generation by The Who, making some kind of like classic generational thing. Did you ever intend to write something that would be a classic, or just try to catch them as it comes?
Oh, yeah, my diary entries.
But
I
no
always
music?
have to start. Yeah, I always have to start songs with titles. Like nobody I know does that, but it gives me focus. If you look at the cover, he's opening his jacket. I love it. And you make me right, and it's a blank.
Right.
You can't make a blank, right? It's a lack of something. It's self-ironic.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fill in the blank. It's just you just tell me what you want to make me.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So he's having fun, He's by making you think. I always love that about him.
Yeah. No, I agree with
It's
that.
emotional. It's from the gut too. It ain't just all intellectual.
Mm-hmm. So the next song is "Walking on the Water." That's the Creedence cover.
It's Creedence, and it's a special Creedence song. I don't know how well you know Creedence, but like I said, boom.
Yeah.
If you're in the boat with Watt, you're going to hear Creedence. You're going to get all 6 fucking albums in order.
Okay.
I'm way into that fucking band because it's a connect with D Boon,
Yeah.
That's the only song. John Fogerty wrote all the original music except one. It was his older brother's band. He stole his older brother's. Well, he didn't steal, but
he took it over.
It's a whole thing. Yeah, God, reading books on that stuff. What a nightmare. But Tom Fogerty wrote that song. That's a trippy song. That's the only song he wrote for Creedence.
Oh, okay.
They started off as a backup band. Tom was going to be a solo singer. Yeah, the Blue Velvets, the Gollywogs. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So did this blow your mind?
He started producing all the records. It's a one-man show.
Okay.
They're only 68 to 70 is a recording band. They do 6 albums. Fuck Mardi Gras. I don't like that one. I like Sweet Hitchhiker, but yeah, I had Doug Clifford on my show last year, and they played clubs for 15 years, but they do 6 records in every 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Crazy.
So that was a mind blow to us, because
that's what I was going to ask you.
There's a connection between me and D Boon first doing music, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Richard Hell's doing one of their songs.
I know. That must have been
mind blow to us.
There you go. That's exactly what I was going to ask you about.
That's on the first album. The only one John Fogerty didn't produce, Zantz did. There's kind of a bass solo in it. They changed it much. And when I asked Richard Hell about it, he said it was Quiet's idea.
To do the cover.
To do
Weird.
Walking on the Water, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Huh. I wonder why that was.
They did some other covers too. I remember Them. I Can Only Give You Everything.
Yeah.
They used to do that song. Yeah, they did a couple other covers, but that one is just so trippy, and D Boon too, man. D Boon was so inspired. On the back of the cover, you see Bob Quine with his Stratocaster. He went to Shinhard Center and got one exactly like that. Of course, asked me to spray paint all over it, so it wasn't black and white. But yeah, he was really inspired by that stuff. And then the Creedence thing. The only thing that would have been a bigger mind blow if they would have had also a BOC cover on there.
Yeah, right. Crazy, man. All right, look, I got one more question for you in relation to the record.
Okay.
So next song is The Plan.
Which is insane lyrics.
Yeah.
This guy is going to make his, father his own sex child.
Well, that's not the way I took it. So
That
I
little
took it.
girl is my lover. The plan, right? He gets this lady to have a baby with him.
Yeah, exactly. But
we were serious too. But secretly smile behind us. He's having fun. Okay, the plan, and then the music. It's like trippy. All these arpeggiated 50s type of thing.
Yeah.
It's what Duke of Earl, get a job.
So let's see. So the plan, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think I grasped that story. That's kind of like, it's kind of essentially a traditional story. Boy meets girl, they fall in love, they have a baby, and then the mother dies. And that was their plan. That's like,
no mother dies. This was the plan. This was set up before she was going to leave. She was only going to be temporary. That's my take.
The lyrics really closely, like near the last couple of verses. It basically, he's saying that the mother passes away, and so now he's left with the child. And so I don't think he meant, love that child as in like love that little girl like a lover. I think he meant it like, you love your child. Like if you have a kid.
That's not my take on it at all.
Okay.
Total comedy thing, coming up with this plan to make the perfect lover.
Right.
And he's making fun of that shit. Like Roxy Music had a song called Every Home a Heartache or some shit. It's about a blow-up doll, right?
Okay. That sounds familiar.
For Your Pleasure, the last one with Brian Eno.
Yep.
Right? My breath is inside you. I blew up your body. Now you blew my mind. Yeah, it's about a fun. I think it's punk is like this. The movement was all about mixing different emotions together. You could have funny and serious at the same time.
Right.
Well, they did that a lot.
Sure. I would have.
The second Blue Oyster Cult album was called Tyranny Mutation, and there was a sticker the record company put on it, and it said black humor. So
really?
I was a teenager, so I asked my mother, Ma, what's black humor? She goes, Michael Watt, read Joseph Heller's Catch-22. So I did. No, like, it's so funny, but it ain't really funny.
No, that's black humor. There you go.
Dear Osarian. So that's the plan to me. Okay. I think it's totally weird and sick, but not like he's like a G.G. Allen guy celebrating it. He's just, it's
right.
It's like Edgar Allan Poe, right? He got all criticized. Can't have a sad ending, right? The guy gets away with murder. He walls that guy up. You're not supposed to let that. What was it called? There was code in Hollywood. You couldn't show suicides. And the bad guy couldn't win at the end. Edgar Allan Poe, right? He had an essay on this called "The Imp of Pervers." Okay. Your mind won't check out every possibility. Doesn't mean you believe in it.
Right. No, I know. It's a twist of the knife at the end of the song. It's kind of like that weird turn that you weren't expecting kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, after the first listen for me, I got an opinion on it. Maybe I'm totally I never asked Richard Hill about it.
Okay. Well, so in 1977, what was your
About what?
About just like
get married and stuff.
Not just even just your life. Like, did you have a plan in 1977? Like, I mean, you're 77.
I wanted to do music with D-Boon.
Right. So by that point, you're like, I want to be in a band. I got D-Boon.
By that point, I started at 12 years old. No, we didn't. Told you, music didn't seem like it could be a career when we were 12 and stuff. It was just something to do.
Right.
There was a movement, and you could do gigs. That didn't mean you could still do a life.
It had to be one or the other.
The Minutemen. You're right. But that's like by 1985, right? So that's 8 years after this record.
Right.
Minutemen always had day jobs. We never made enough money. Firehose got to reap in some of the benefit. Punk wasn't even movement wasn't even part of college radio yet. If you looked at a college, I used to call up for SST stations. They have Journey and shit. These guys wanted to be corporate pawns. There was no open radio at college radio in the early. It was REM that brought that.
Right.
yeah, 70s and early 80s. You don't know what a fucking desolate place the movement was because of all the fucking assholes judging you and shit and try to destroy it, try to kill it in the cradle.
Right.
So you never had any notion that you could do this as a means to support yourself. But it's a way
Right.
I can do with my buddy.
So when you like when the Minutemen are touring and stuff like that back then in the late 70s, early 80s, I mean, did you?
No. Minutemen first tours in 1980 with Black Flag, U.S. and Europe. First time we went to Europe too.
Oh, okay.
1983. So that's coming up. Before that, out-of-town gig was the city, right? 400 miles north, or San Diego, 120 miles south. But where you get in the van, the Black Flags, we learned by actually being in the van, all 10 of us in one van.
Yeah. Now,
it was like a trip, like an adventure.
Right.
And I remember one time D. Boone said, "Man, people pay for this and call them vacations."
That's true.
We stopped at every Civil War battlefield, every Revolutionary battlefield, all the museums. We loved it, man.
Right.
Which is funny because if you read the interviews with rock and rollers, they hated it and shit. Drudgery and
right.
That wasn't our take on it at all. We loved tour.
And you didn't find it hard? Like, I mean, like, especially with punk not having been a big thing at that time, you know, you guys are kind of paving the way for everybody in the future. So, I mean, like the gigs that you were doing, it was like for few handfuls of people, like across the country,
Look, I
right?
tell you, Black Flag built the circuit that everybody's still touring on.
Right.
Chuck Dukowski's phone book. Yeah. He put all them, and they did 3-4 month tours, 100 gig tours. They don't get any credit, man. It's trippy. They're the ones who built the thing. We learned from them.
Well, you were riding along with them. I mean, so you were there.
Yeah, but they put it together. We learned from them.
Right. But it was hard, wasn't it? Like as far as just like, you know, make enough money to get
in a salt mine. Jesus. Barons. You know, everything's relative, okay?
Right.
Some shit is way harder. Sponge diver. Oh my God. Wearing lead shoes with a big hard hat on and you're down. There's a lot of hard gigs.
Right.
So I don't know I don't know if those gigs compare to that.
Okay. Yeah. It's a different perspective.
Like pop 8 decks down in a nuclear engine room where bottoms of his shoes are sticking to the deck.
Right. Yeah, that's hard.
Nightmare.
I guess it's all how you look at it. Because I mean, like, you know,
it is. You got to keep your perspective.
Right. I'm a little.
Look, there's the O word, opportunity, and there's the B word, burden. You get to choose, okay? And we saw it as opportunity.
Okay.
Everything's got some toll, some tithe.
Right. I agree. I mean, I just
pick your fights, right? Pick your fights.
Right. I dig your perspective, man. I mean, like, hey, I'm an admirer of you. I think that you're amazing. I think your career's been amazing. I think that this mentality that you have, obviously, to kind of like look at that opportunity as opposed to that burden, it's inspiring, man. And so, thank you.
Well, because we were with these guys that were like-minded. Like I said, we were part of a movement.
Yeah, it's like a whole family.
We sounded different. We thought that was the point. You know, they said anarchy. It wasn't like Jamnicano. It's not a slogan. It's a way of all this variety, man. When you went and got those a lot of those bands, man, like Richard Hell, right? Didn't see him for years. We only knew them as music, as records. Then the guys you met as people, like up at the gigs in Hollywood, or you're in the boat with them, like Black Flag, Husker Du, Meat Puppets.
Mm-hmm.
These guys were very right. There would have been no double nickels on the dime without Zed Arcade. That totally inspired. We had an album done. Then they came to town, did a double album. Hey, we should do one too. We wrote all these songs so we could make. Yeah, this thing was kind of feeding off each other thing. Of course, that was part of the deal. I remember Joey Ramone talking to him at like a stadium gig or something. He said, "Punk, yeah, it's kind of like a hay wagon. If you got something to bring, come on board." So you had to bring something, but then by doing that, you got to drink from all the other. Coltrane said music's a big reservoir, right? That's totally it. That movement was a big reservoir that we were part of, and we were trying to pull our weight and be creative also. I mean, that's what's
amazing.
neat about movements. They're trippy things, and they're really Genuine ones are very hard. There's all kinds of fake ones because people try to use it as a marketing bum rush, you know.
Right.
But
Well, that's
true
kind of
movements are trippy. They
right.
usually don't last that long.
So there's no movement these days, right? Like today, there's no
No, but
movement,
they
is there?
opened up things that's not the same kind of movement. But I
Right.
I meet kids that are writing songs as teenagers. They're making music in their bedrooms. There's certain things that got changed that never went back.
Right.
Those are the things I consider punk, not the haircut so much and the beats per minute.
Right. Right. Yeah, that actually leads me back to an old question. A question that I didn't ask you was just like, what do you look to for inspiration right now? Do you have anyone that inspires you
Well,
currently?
I talked about a lot of books.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But anything that does it for you?
My third opera, Hyphenated Man. I put out, you know, what I couldn't listen to Minutemen when he got killed. Okay, but then those two kids, Tim Irwin, Keith Sharon, young men, they never got to see the Minutemen. So making We Jam Econo was their way to learn about us. Well, I had to listen to that music again to talk about it. I wanted to do it again. So that's what my third, but I didn't want to rip off my own band. I was with the Stooges at Dread, Michael Cervantes' 400-year B-Day of Don Quixote. And the Teller's right next to the Prado. And here they got 7 of, I couldn't find him at first because they call him El Bosco. Hieronymus Bosch.
Okay.
Guard to Earthly Delights. I looked at that fucking thing, and, you know, there's no glass. It's sitting right there on a stand. And this looks like a Minutemen gig. All these little fucking things happening. So that gave me the idea. I'm going to do.
Okay.
By this time, I've already done 2 operas. Now, I've come from the Minutemen with little songs, but I finally felt I had to deal with talking about losing D. Boone. So contemplating the engine room 25 years ago.
Yeah.
That's when I wrote my first opera. Second opera, I almost died of this sickness in 2000. Second Man's Middle Stand. And I used Dante Alighieri, Commedia. The sickness was the hell. The healing was a purgatory, and getting to do the kayak and the bass.
Right.
Pedal bicycle was paradise. Right? Now this one here, I'm going to use those little creatures because they look to me like there's this one where this devil is blowing his horn, you know, his nose is a horn, and blowing your own horn. I think they were like little aphorisms, Dutch sayings, you know, but I don't know, 500-year-old Dutch, you know, so I just made up my own. And so those little men already mixed, I also mixed it up with, not the books so much, because I read the books, there's like 13 of them, but the movie of Wizard of Oz. Because I think Dorothy's tripping. Yeah, the lion and the scarecrow and Tin Man, they're the hired hands in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
You know, her love interest is probably Toto the dog, but she's tripping on what men do to be men. And I thought this was the big midlife crisis thing. So why not use 30 little men from the Hieronymus Bosch? 90% of them came from 3 Paytons. Garden of Earthly Delights, Last Judgment, and Temptation of St. Anne. I've seen them all. One's in Lisbon, one's in Vienna, one's in Madrid. Yeah, intense stuff, man. And this is what inspired me, you know. And then you don't have to worry about ripping off, like with books, you know. You don't have to worry about ripping off the licks.
Right.
But these helped inspire me big time.
All right. Well, hey, can you tell me about this gig that you're going on tour with, Main Steam Stop Valve?
Yeah, this is not my band. This is Mike Big Betta's band.
Okay.
He's a guy from Western Mass. He lives in Gainesville, Florida these days. And I helped him with the record. That's where I met him, the studio in Long Beach. And the drummer name was Jim Keltner. Incredible. I got to record with him twice, in fact. Yeah. But anyway, Main Steam Stop Valve comes. He actually let me name the band. He writes all the music. He even writes the bass line. I've never been in this situation where, well, like with Stooges, you play the stuff from the dead guy, right?
Sure, right.
But I've never had a guy write parts for me. This is the first time that ever happened. There's different ways to collaborate, I found. Sometimes you're the shot caller. Like with my operas, right? I always put my name in the group, so I want people to know who to blame. Sometimes, like with Italian guys, I actually, you know, they do a song, I do a song, you know. There's different ways to collaborate. You take directions. Sometimes you give the direction, you know. lots of different ways. And with Mike Baguetta, it's really interesting. He writes by parts, and they're very simple rhythmic figures. He's kind of in Nels Cline's school guitar. Nels Cline opened the door for a lot of people. That he's a guitar man on my first opera. Incredible music, Nels Cline. He plays with Wilco these days in his own projects.
Right. I'm familiar.
He's got a twin brother on drums, Alex. Beautiful guys, free jazz, whatever. He can play anything.
Right.
And Mike Baguette is kind of in that school. And the drummer man is the drummer man from the first opera, Steve Hodges. And he did just finish doing 13 years with Mavis Staples.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a trippy kind. It's a trio.
Yeah.
And we did 3 records during this situation by trading files. We did an album right before that we're going to tour on with this thing here. 48 gigs, 48. But Main Steam Stop Valve, the name comes from me and D. Boone's favorite movie when we were boys was The Sand Pebbles with Steve McQueen, 1966.
Okay.
I didn't know there was a book. When I was helping, the first band I really helped out was Porno for Pyros.
Right.
Yeah, about 25 years ago, right before my first opera. And I found the book. Richard McKenna wrote it, the guy from Mountain Home, Idaho. And man, I could tell he was a sailor. And it turns out he was a machinist mate, 23 years. But in the 20s, you know, with a China gunboat, old Spanish Navy gunboat in China before the revolution stuff. And man, it blew me away. The book, there's a lot of that in the first opera. But we used it, and I wrote like the song words for one of the songs called Eureka Moment.
Okay.
And it's from that book. It's because before the coolies are doing all the work, and they don't know what they're doing. They're just monkey see, monkey do. And Holman don't like this. Agnes,
right?
Chief's mate. He wants the guy to understand what he's doing, so he uses metaphor and stuff, dragons to explain the shit. I mean, it's got a really, you want to talk about a sad ass ending? Oh my god! I recommend both the book. Steve McQueen, one of my favorite actors. And, but they're different. Hollywood fucked up the ending. The book ending is.
They always do, man.
Yeah, they always do.
Yeah,
but Steve McQueen is still good.
Yeah, there's a redeeming factor
and stuff. But that's where the name comes from. The actor who plays Pohan, the coolie, Mako, he makes them stop wow, you know. Because it comes to him when Holman makes the breakthrough, you know, and he gets it. He understands that steam is a way of, you know, transferring energy.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, why not give the guy the theory? Because, you know, I know why they didn't want it, because they didn't want him to have any power and be slaves. Knowledge is power.
Right.
So that's what this project is. It's to help Mike Baguetta.
Okay. Well, because you guys are going on tour, doing the entire country.
2 weeks from today.
Right. And the closest you're going to come to me is April 4th at the Middle East.
Okay. That's kind of.
Do you know if that's
Massachusetts?
Yeah. Do you know if that's upstairs or downstairs you're playing?
Yeah, it used to be a bowling alley or something downstairs.
Right, but now it's a big.
I have no idea. I played there a few times, but mostly I played next door something called TT the Bears.
Yeah. Right.
Actually, it's Cambridge, right? It's not really
Cambridge. Yeah, people kind of just use it in,
Well, there's little neighborhoods, just like here. So,
yeah. It's technically Cambridge, yeah. People say Boston just because it's easy.
The metro area. I would say the Boston metro area.
There you go. All right, man. Well, hey, I wish you best of luck on tour.
He asked to do a Minutemen cover of June 16th from Double Nickel on the Dime, so we will be playing that.
Oh, sweet. That sounds great, man.
Yeah.
Well, I hope.
Here's the other thing. He's like 20 years younger.
Oh, really?
This is how I know the punk movement. Look, the last tour, I bought a drummer that was 40 years younger than me. That never happened in the old days.
Right.
This is a really good positive thing that came from the movement. Yeah, and also rock and rollers got old. How old are the Stones? They're 70s.
Oof, yeah, I think so.
It used to be always sold as a youth music. Now it's just music, which is good.
Right.
So there's no problem with me playing with a guy who's 20 years young.
No, of course not.
He's the shot caller.
It's not like you're having sex. You're playing music.
I got to tell you, in the old days, people think you're perverts or some weirdo. It's fucked up.
Right.
And that's where we lost the whole thing of mentors, right? The jazz guys had that, the blues guys had that. But rock and roll couldn't have that until now. And that's
right.
one of the positive results, in my opinion, of the movement.
Right. Cool, man. Hey, well, listen, I think we've done it here as far as covering this album is concerned, and I just want you to know that it's been an honor.
Here's the other thing, Another World. It fades out on him coughing. That is such a crazy way to end.
Right.
Really, really slow fade, and then down to the last rise, beaten off. I mean, not literally. But,
right.
I never have.
That's something that, yes, we'll ask him in the future next time you see him.
He just turned 70. He wrote me from Barcelona on his birthday. Beautiful guy, big inspiration to me.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's been great speaking about this record with you and kind of getting your perspective on it. And I really thank you for taking the time, man. It's been an honor speaking with you.
Oh, right back. Really. I mean, Jimmy, so kind, and not asking me, surface stuff, deep stuff. Thank you so much.
I try, man. I try. Thank you. It's the least I can do for you taking the time.
Okay. Take it easy, brother.
All right. Thanks, Watt. Vinyl and Vision is a Psychic Static production. Theme song written and performed by Jeff Robbins of 123 Astronaut.